So I'll concur on that one. So the topic of today's live cast, everybody tuned in for, is consumer engagement. It's something we think a lot about at Hudson. You know, our algorithm for our visual AI tool is completely rooted in consumer engagement. So I'm interested to hear from you how Nestlé engages and builds relationships with customers in this new era where the shelf is digital, essentially.
Well, look, that's kind of like the $1,000,000 question. Is sophisticated and complex, and I think it's we live in a time where it's never been more challenging to be a marketer and to be an advertiser and to do what we do, and the evolution of the industry over the past few years. It was, back in the day, it was pretty easy. It was just print, and then radio came along, and then TV came along, and we kind of, that was it. And now, with so many touch points, so many channels, become increasingly complex. And at the end of the day, our ability as consumers ourselves and the expectations to have everything, frictionless, touchless, like quick, fast tomorrow, and at the end of the day, that's our challenge as marketers to drive that engagement, to drive the awareness of the brand, the familiarity with the products, and to try to be present wherever we need to be with the right touch points, the right communication, and be able to convert that purchase, hopefully.
And something that you and I talked about before is the definition of engagement, right? Like, it seems like, we throw the word around a lot, but it means so much more than, I think, a basic metric, right?
Yeah, well, so that's, it's this kind of line that I've been trying to coin and share with folks in the team and with our agency partners and so on. And it's rooted on, when a lot of conversations around digital first, right? And we got to be digital first, and digital first this and digital first that. And I got like a little bit annoyed with the term, and I was like, well, what do we mean, right? And at the end, as I was kind of digesting the term, for me, it came down to the difference between advertising and engagement, and trying to have evolve our thinking and to say the fundamental difference between traditional touch points and digital touch points is our ability to engage consumers in a two-way type of conversation. With traditional touch points, you advertise and you get your message out, and hopefully, it's embedded in an entertaining or engaging storyline that will reward consumers for their attention. But that's about it. And then they'll go and, maybe they'll convert to purchase. Digital is different, though. Digital enables us to have a two-way conversation. It doesn't necessarily mean a reply on a post or whatever. It could be a share. It could be a like. It could be many different ways. Them themselves sharing content with us. We leverage a lot of UGC, which is something that we can't, as consumers, create TV commercials, but we sure can do that for on digital platforms. And that for me is a fundamental premise that whoever's been able to leverage more and more is ultimately going to do better.
Yeah, and I think it's such an interesting point, the difference between, you said earlier that it is a really challenging time to be a marketer, but what an opportunity, right? I mean, if you think about the timing schedule of advertising from the top down, the way it used to be, that's a 6 month to a year process where you would pay all of this money to get audience focus groups and feedback, when really that stuff is at your fingertips now. You just have to listen and not be afraid of it, right? And I think and I do want you to take credit for my favorite, not that you should take credit for it, but my favorite viral moment of the year, which brought me so much joy, was our friend on the skateboard.
That's right, Mr. Dogface. And look, and that's really it, right? Because at the end of the day, you can't plan for that type of content, that type of format. But if you understand what's behind it, then there might be something a little bit more interesting. And what's behind it I'm not sure he intentionally meant for it to be, but when we look at it and people ask me, so why was that so big? And they're trying to Monday morning quarterback that piece of content. And, I tell them, like, honestly, I don't know. But in my opinion, he looked like we wanted to feel. And at a time where we were going through a lot of stuff. And that was, accidentally or not, rooted on insight and understanding of the audience. And when you think about what that means, and it's not just like, oh, I heard them say this or this focus group or whichever survey, but if you analyze and go into depth a little bit more what that could mean, what you can unlock is meaningfully different and much more engaging. And going back to your point, yeah, I mean, there's never been a cooler time to be a marketer and an advertiser. Like, there's so many different ways. And it's almost like a Rubik's Cube situation where you want to look at things from a multicultural point of view or from a generational point of view, or from a category lens or needs and drive, need states and drivers and barriers, and through which touch points and in which ways, and to try to build compelling stories that will bring outcomes.
Yeah, and just so everyone knows, we're talking about our friend skateboarding, drinking some ocean spray, giving me life with Fleetwood Mac.
That's right.
You can't breathe for that, right?
Can't breathe for that. Dogface 208, is it? Yep.
So we're talking about like that circular feedback loop that we can get from our consumers now. And I'm interested to hear how specifically you are using consumer engagement data. How do you combine, if you do, sales and creative data to tell what and why people are buying? What works?
Right. Look, this is something that we've been observing in the industry a lot. And the power of data and data powered or data driven, and companies trying to strengthen their access to data, their ability to capture data, and so on. Okay, that's great. Now, I think that we're starting to struggle a little bit overall is our ability to leverage that data and bake it into our processes, be it commercial, from communications point of view, and so on and so forth. I would tell you we haven't cracked that yet. We have a lot of intentionality around it. We got great teams with wicked smart people trying to figure it out. For me, it's fundamental because it goes back to the initial point around the importance of insights and the importance of understanding and analyzing, and then baking it into your processes, be it, in my case, planning, brand positioning, communication strategy, creative development, and then, as inputs, track the performance, and then feed the outputs back into the system again and progressively get better. And even then, do it at a faster and faster rate, right? Get this, quick learnings, quick takeaways, optimize. As we start to chart out paths to dynamic content optimization and personalized consumer experiences, you can only optimize and create this type of content based on information. Otherwise, you're just changing stuff on the fly without any knowledge. So as far as I can tell, and this might be wrong, I don't think anybody's cracked it. You can definitely tell who's doing a little bit better job than others. I'll tell you with all humility, I don't think we are crushing it just yet, but I think that we're on the right path and hopefully, be able to embed it as a practice. Now, the last thing that I think is a challenge, or is kind of gets in the way, is our ability to not get paralyzed by data, because that's also one that you can start to look at data and there's different ways to look at it and so on, that becomes overwhelming and then does not enable action either.
Yeah, there's analysis paralysis.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
So shifting gears a little bit, one of the great things, one of the, put it this way, few positive things about times of crazy economic upheaval is that out of that, traditionally, has come great innovations from different companies. So I'm interested to hear, innovation is a broad word. How are you guys innovating this year in terms of your consumer strategy and into 2021 and beyond?
Look, 2020, right? It's like such an interesting year, and such a difficult year in so many ways. From our perspective or my experience in these past few months, it was very interesting as we reflect on the months that have passed. Everything that it demanded from us, right? We started the year with, perfectly timed planning cycles, everybody aligned to the principles and so on, feeling good about what our game plan was. And then March happened and everything went out the window. And we had to scramble, okay, let's first check, our existing creative to make sure it's not tone deaf in this environment. And let's shift creative to make sure it's addressing the current situation. Then we started to see, unfortunately, pick up on the economy and the job situation and probable recessionary environment and how we needed to adjust towards that, and so on and so on and so on. And that, put pressure in ourselves and our teams to kind of think about things in a different way and to, as an outcome, prove to ourselves that we needed to do things differently, and processes and things that were there before and we're like, well, we kind of didn't do them and nothing really happened and maybe we don't want to do it anymore. But we actually did this, which was very, very meaningful, and maybe we need to focus on that. Today I was in a conversation with with our CMO, and she used this phrase also that I thought was very fortunate to capture a little bit what I'm talking about. And she was like, we need to hack for outcomes. And that was a little bit what 2020 was. We were just hacking over and over and over for outcomes. Now, innovation usually results from, the stress and pressure and need is a strong driver of innovation. And I think that as we go into 2021 and onwards, being mindful of agility and the potential volatility of the environment, and have a plan, and also have a plan to not have a plan, and kind of be prepared for both. And then if you can stay your course, wonderful. But if you need to shift gears as you go along the way, that's okay too. And you need to we need to get really comfortable with good and kind of forget perfect for a little bit, because perfect, not sure it's the way to go anymore.
I'm looking away because I'm like literally taking notes. I love outcome hacking. I think that's a great way to look at it, and right. Credit to your CMO for that. But I think it's such an interesting point. If I'm hearing what you're saying, it's that you paused, listened, and adapted. You didn't stop. Right. And I think, at Dash Hudson, we work across so many different brand partners, and I work with some people who stopped because they couldn't hit perfect, so they did nothing. And I'm seeing them, it's holiday season now, try to get back into social marketing, and the pause is affecting them, not just in simple, like, am I popping in the Instagram algorithm, but you have to empower your teams, I think, to meet the moment, to continue communicating, because stopping doesn't seem to work.
Right. And I think, something we learned as well is the power in the team. And if and if you're fortunate enough to have strong, talented individuals within your team who know what they're doing, and hopefully they'll have the proactiveness to jump and go and to see something in their field, in their trade, and be empowered to go. And then, all right, we'll catch up with you, but know that you have the the authority and the responsibility and the accountability to make some choices and be able to keep going. If in an organization the size of ours, if we, which we've done in the past, if we try to, walk all together at the same time and with alignment top down everywhere, we'll get there, but we'll probably won't get there at the speed that the environment is demanding from us. And those folks in the team that showed the grit to keep charging, those were the playmakers, and they moved strides, and pushed us forward immensely. And then, all right, and then you kind of provide some thoughts and some guidance or whatever, but ultimately it's what keeps us moving and keeps us charging forward. To your point, I mean, if you get stuck, you lose momentum, and then you become even more nervous to make decisions and make choices. And then ultimately you don't realize that you haven't moved in a while, and then it's even harder and harder to keep moving. So we make as best calculated risks as we can, and keep moving if we know it's decisions based on with the right principles.
Risk is a really good word right there. It's the day, like you were talking about earlier, the days of the top-down advertising communication, it's over, frankly. And I think getting comfortable with risk and having your parameters in place to let your teams take risks, and again, avoiding perfection in the digital space is going to lead to better results anyway, right?
And also, I mean, it kind of goes back and connects back to the overall topic around consumer engagement and digital first communication, or moving from advertising to engagement. When you go in with a marketing plan that's predicated on $10 million for national distribution, a big TV buy, $1 million and change for production and agency fees and this and that, the risk is pretty high. Like, you need to have your ducks in a row and make sure, like, all right, we got this. If you start out small and you define, all right, what are going to be our content pillars? What are consumers care about that our brand has, a role to play in, or a message to deliver, and so on. Create some pieces of content, start putting it out there, see how they're picking up, and start to build from there. Kind of flip the script a little bit, and then okay, this tweet or this post or this asset for Facebook didn't work that well. Okay, no problem, but we found which one did, and we can build from that one. So it's complicated and it's not comfortable to our usual ways of working. But if we start trying things out, then the fear is mitigated, the risk is mitigated to a certain degree, and hopefully you create something more impactful, more meaningful without getting completely stuck.
Mm-hmm. And that's what we talk about a lot at Dash Hudson, is leading with content and audience engagement data at the fore, instead of this traditional, and I think we talked about this before too, choosing the channel first. So I'd love to hear from you, what sort of moving into the future, like trying to move into 2021, not even limited to channel, what are you excited about in terms of whether it's a channel or a way of creating content or something for next year and beyond?
Look, for me, now I'm excited about this relentless change in the industry and these dynamics that keep evolving and evolving and evolving. And it goes from the audiences themselves and the complexity that they entail in both who they are, what they care about, what they want to hear, and again, saying, are we going to go broader and deeper into multicultural? Are we going to go generational? Are we going to, start to engage Gen Z, who, by the way, are incredibly interesting as an audience, because the way that generation has grown up consuming content is profoundly different than all the previous ones. The type of subjects that matter to these audiences. to the platforms themselves, right now we live in the world of like Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and a couple of others. And maybe those will remain, maybe those will change, maybe newcomers, new platforms will come along. And even those platforms that currently exist, how do we push, as they develop new technologies, how do we push the boundaries and leverage those platforms to continue to drive engagement again. And right now we've seen like the voting poll things and some of these things, and Instagram came up with Reels. All right, let's try, but it's not going to end there, and it's continuously learning and adapting to those versus just here's the 3-second version of or 6-second version with brand up front and your product. And okay, that maybe that followed certain hygiene practices, but it was maybe not the best use of that platform. So that's what I'm really excited about, interested in, and continue to hopefully put content out there that engages consumers.
Nice.
Cool.
We have some good Q&A.
Oh, yeah?
From the audience.
Right.
Yeah. So Steve is asking, how are you currently collecting insights on consumer needs and preferences? And then how are you using this data to impact your marketing strategies?
We have a lot of different work streams. We have a very strong CMI group, Consumer Marketplace Insights group, who, they're all the time. We're conducting research, traditional and digital platforms, and so on and so forth. That informs a lot of what we do, what comes out of this group. Second, we're trying to accelerate a lot what we do from a social listening perspective, with specific tools and partners that can help us keep an eye and an ear on what's out there and be able to bake that in. We have, a very strong community management team, and these guys are, in the trenches day in and day out, and they see these conversations, and they bubble up all the insights that they're coming across in their users or their categories to their brand teams. As well as what we have, from an analytics perspective and coming, information coming from our partners in terms of performance of our media, and how it MMMs and that sort of thing. So at the end of the day, it goes back to the conversation before. Okay, we got all these pieces of information, some with longer lead times, some with short lead times, different points of focus. How do you not completely paralyzed looking at all of that and try to make out the meaningful pieces of information that you need to inform what you're trying to solve for.
Nice. Another great question came through about what skills would you like your marketing team to develop this year?
That's a good question.
I know.
Look,
I like that.
For me, there's a couple of things. Number one, and I don't know that it needs to develop this year, but something that is a premise is impeccable at the fundamentals. We can talk about how modern the marketing environment is and the TikToks and what have you. If marketing, if us as marketers and advertisers are not brutally brilliant at our fundamentals, understanding the drivers of consumers, understanding, our position in the marketplace, understanding drivers and barriers and consumption habits and so on and so forth, then you're building your strategy out of thin air. So first and foremost is brilliance at the fundamentals. Then impeccable strategy and clarity around what they want their brand and their communication to stand for and achieve. And then immense flexibility to execute and bring to life. So, I guess you could say it goes from rigidity to flexibility. but you need a solid foundation to build upon so that you can get truly agile at the top and not chasing shiny objects. Because I've seen marketers who are just like, on the next. And I was like, oh, look at this new thing. Okay, yes, it's cool. Is it right for you? Does it have anything to do with your category or your consumer? No. So what are you doing? So anyway. It's a good question.
I know, it was a good one, right? I think we have time for one more. And this is from Lauren. She asked, Nestlé just announced an aggressive climate roadmap. Do you have any plans, or how are you planning to incorporate that into consumer communications?
Yeah, this is something super exciting for us. It's been an announcement that we've been it's been all over. We're immensely proud because we know the important role that companies like ours can have in driving meaningful change for the planet. So these are huge commitments, but at the end of the day, there's a couple of things that we believe are fundamental to them. It's consumer relevant sustainability. It's not people need to care about this. It's something that we need to be able to connect all the way through, and most often for us is particularly in the US, is also the ability to bring it to life at a brand level. And yes, we have these actions that get communicated brilliantly from our corporate communications team and at a corporate level, but we need to be able to bring it down at a brand level, on pack, on our websites, on our content, and drive relevance to the different actions that different brands will take. Depending on the category or the brand you're on, it has varying degrees of implementation, right? But fundamentally, for me, what's exciting is, again, the principles behind it and the intentionality that we take this very, very seriously, and that we want to be a force of change.
That's great. And I realize we actually have more time than I thought, so we have time for more questions. So if anybody else has any in the audience, please populate them in the Q&A. We have about 10 more minutes. So this one actually goes to what you were just saying about intentionality and the fundamentals. Do you talk about brand purpose at the brand level at Nestlé? The question is, when it comes to communicating with your consumers, how do you think about brand purpose? How does that impact your approach to marketing?
I love this question. Brand purpose it's a big subject for us, and it's been so for a few years, and it's been a tricky one, to be honest, because brand purpose, I think we've been on a journey to define properly, and not only to define and articulate properly, but to make sure that it operates at the right altitude. And some of our early exercises to embed brand purpose, or to think about brand purpose, it became kind of like a separate exercise that we were doing, separate from brand planning, and it got like super lofty. And we even executed against it, and it's easy to get lost in kind of that exercise, and because we feel passionate about certain things, and it's like, oh, we're out to do this and this and this. And then after a couple of tries at it, you realize, well, that was a wonderful sentiment, but like my brand didn't really have a role to play, and it doesn't really connect with the nature of my product. And that spot that we created was actually beautiful, but like, it's a great story, but so what? So then, we learned and we evolved, and try to bring it to the right altitude to drive, purpose and a sense of for our brands, that it's much more calibrated to its role in people's lives, and ultimately what they do to make people's lives better. At the end of the day, we're just doing an exercise of articulating what consumers already know. And that's one of the things that makes me immensely proud to work at Nestlé, because I believe to my core that all of our products make people's lives better, little and small ways. But you start your day with a nice cup of coffee or with creamer, and then hopefully that does something good for you. You come from working all day, and what are we going to make for dinner? All right, we can pop a lasagna in the oven and kind of have that sorted out. Or I have 2 daughters, and bake cookies with them for a little bit. So it's when you think about what that does and what that means, that's where the true purpose lies, right? And now within that's been part of the exercise as well with sustainability. How do we make sure that they work in not a separate exercise, but that they work in sync, because then otherwise you're pulverizing your efforts and where you want to go with it. Well, here's about sustainability, but we want to stand for this, and our purpose is that. We got to bring it all together.
That goes into nicely to another question we got about, I'm going to paraphrase from Gary, because the theme here is about consumer engagement, right? And you talked a minute about social listening. A flip side, which we saw a lot of this year in terms of consumer engagement, is negative brand engagement, right? So how are you managing that today? And I don't think that ability for consumers to communicate very publicly is going to go away anytime soon. So how do you tackle that at the brand level and at the company level?
So I'm trying to understand the question. So negative brand engagement, like consumers.
Negative brand engagement, but also just like negativity around a brand in this day and age. It can take so many different paths.
Look, first of all, there's different ways to think about it, but number one is, of course, our going in intentions and what we want when we communicate, and the stuff that we put out there. We have immense care and principles in terms of what's in and what's out, and what we would never do from a communications point of view, and so on. From there, of course, you put stuff out there, and hopefully a majority of people will like it. But then that's a little bit as well the reality of social media. And any of us that have spent a couple of minutes on social media, you see that a lot of people are opinionated, and some just want to go after you, and some have a genuine intention to give you some feedback, and we go through all of it either way with extreme diligence through our community team, through our CES team, and our corporate team, to assess everything and say, okay, this is just somebody that just trying to get at us, or this is a meaningful and a legitimate point of view that we want to address. And then we establish through whichever touch point or mean is ideal, and we establish a communication with them to try to have a conversation about it. I don't think that anybody, nobody is doing themselves a service ignoring, but you need to do a little bit of triage, and then listen with intent, and hopefully learn and go from there.
Nice. It's honestly, not to just tie things back to the topic the whole time, but it does go back to what you were saying about consumer engagement. It's actually listening and staying engaged versus the old way of doing things, just talking at a megaphone at people.
That's the premise, right? Because if you want to have a two-way conversation, first of all, it's not just what I want to tell you, and hopefully you telling me how much you liked it. It's like, if I'm open to hearing from you, I'm open for anything you got to say. And, hopefully most of it you like. And if you have a point of view that you didn't like, let's hear it so that I can probably not say that again or not do that again, and talk in a different way.
Well, thank you. Short, but I'm glad we were able to squeeze in a few extra minutes, and we're thrilled to have you both with us. We'll have to schedule part 2 for this discussion soon.